Hello, everyone. I am Solomon Lederer from Blockmatics, and we are back. We're talking again about Tezos. We did a webinar on Tezos a few weeks ago with Obsidian Systems, but today we got Adrian Brink from Cryptium Labs, based out of Switzerland, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, Adrian. So really excited to have you on and talking a bit about, Tezos development, because you're one of the top Tezos developer shops that's actually working on core development and some of the other tooling around it. So Adrian, excited to have you on. Maybe give us a little bit of a background and how did you sort of get started with Tezos, or maybe even a little bit of the lay of the land of how Cryptium got involved. My understanding is that you started Cryptium Labs. Co-founded it. So how did that?
So how we got into Tezos is sort of it's an interesting story. It's fully path dependent. It just happened because one of my other co-founders, he actually wrote the very first transpiler from Haskell to Michelson, so you can write some Haskell code and output some Michelson contracts. Chris, but so the way Cryptium Labs started was at the time in late 2008. No, was it 2019? Late 2000.
It's hard in crypto time.
Late 2018, actually. So before this whole proof of stake space came about. Is it? I don't know. Either 2018. Either 2018 or 2017. One of those. Yeah. I happened to work for a company called 2017. Late 2017. And
are you talking about the Tezos proof of stake?
No, this is sort of the history for Cryptium Labs and how this came about, and then also how that led to Tezos. Yeah. I was working with Chris and my two co-founders, at the Tenement company. So we were working on developing Cosmos, writing Tenement core, developing the Tenement consensus algorithm. And so in December 2017, for the first time, we had a working piece of software, and I set up this network, random Zoom calls for other strangers over the internet. And we ran the first proof of stake testnet using Tenement consensus. And so this evolved over time. I started setting up the validator program for Tenement and Cosmos. And in mid 2018, I got together with Awa and Chris and was look, proof of stake is a real thing. We don't have enough validators that can run the software securely. Surely we should set one up. And so we got together, set up a validator company in Switzerland, because Switzerland seemed like the perfect jurisdiction for validators, in the sense that it's the, historically speaking, safe jurisdiction to park money. Zero political problems, no climate, no earthquakes that I have to anticipate.
Well, so you're not Swiss?
I'm German. No.
Okay.
But I also ended up wanting to move to Switzerland, so I was sort of fitting.
Yeah.
I ended up moving to Switzerland, set up the company there. But so we set up this validator entity, because who is better to run validators than the people that actually build the underlying software stacks, right? The protocol engineers fully understand top down the entire stack, so they are sort of in the most privileged position to run secure proof of stake validators, because in proof of work, sort of the attack surface is fairly limited. Proof of stake, this is the entire state machine is your attack surface. Cosmos got delayed though. And Chris had written the transpiler, Juvix, at the time it was called Juvix. And so we sort of went into Tezos, started spending more and more time in the Tezos ecosystem. And we launched our validator in cycle 11. So we were 4 cycles late. We bought our first roll on, I think, Kraken, in cycle 3. It was weird.
Oh, I didn't even know Kraken was
or some exchange. Maybe we bought them. Maybe
Gate,
also
I think Gate.io, I think, was the only one.
I just remember I spent a bunch of ETH to buy one roll. And so in cycle 11 we launched our validator. And we never took any sort of VC funding to the state.
And so you had to put in by 1,000 or 10,000.
10,000,
which I mean Tezos, which I don't know. I guess was almost maybe $2 at that time, or $1.50.
We bought it at a bad moment. But so this sort of kickstarted Cryptium Labs as a validator, and then by now we are actually the second largest validator on Tezos.
Oh, really?
We just surpassed Gate, which I'm very happy about. Finally, actually validators are making it and surpassing Gate and like Coinbase and like Polychain.
Wow, amazing! And how many roles is that, or how many Tezos is that?
2,800, I think.
2,800 roles, I guess, times 8,000 for
yes
a role. Yeah.
The change to 8,000 as a role size. It's like
it's harder to do the math. I know.
It's like we went from the metric system to the imperial system. It's like
right, totally, yeah.
We should have gone like 10,000 to 1,000.
That's a good argument. So now you could put in that proposal. You can. It's harder to do the numbers now.
Storage doesn't carry 1,000, sadly.
Yeah.
This is sort of how this evolved, and we ended up because sort of like validation is somewhat interesting, but mostly because we get to run the software that we wrote. And so in Tezos, we sort of didn't want to just run the software, but to fully understand, we had to effectively audit the code base anyway. And we are protocol engineers by heart, so we now just build cool protocol extensions.
Okay. Can you explain that a little bit more of what the software was that you built? You're saying there was a transpiler.
So the transpiler was sort of the earliest thing. And Juvix is a project we may end up picking up again in sort of a slightly modified version. No, but I'm just saying that generally, we are protocol engineers, and we sort of enjoy the process of building good software and good economic protocols much more than we enjoy the process of running 500 servers.
Okay.
So sort of like in Tezos, it's slowly shifted from, well, baking now works. Let's focus on making sure that what we bake on actually is as useful as possible. And so we're just hacking on core right now, and we'll be proposing something in 3 weeks. Yeah, 3 weeks.
Right. And just to give a little bit more on a more general overview on Cryptium, it's you're not just doing this for Tezos. You're also validators on a number of other networks. So you're still connected with Cosmos or doing validation on that network. But in terms of the development, my understanding is that you're primarily Tezos focused.
Yeah, so there are two areas. One is, so by far the largest one is Tezos, in terms of core protocol engineering. And then we're sort of working on a bunch of also higher level projects that are that will get implemented in Tezos but aren't necessarily Tezos specific. So for example, general research into zero knowledge proofs. And then a specific instantiation of that would be, how do we put this into Tezos? Same for higher level languages. How do we write secure higher level smart contracting languages? And then how do we put this into Tezos? And so the last one is
something. Also, yeah, you just mentioned that there would be something in a few weeks that you're working on. What was that about? Something you're releasing something in a few weeks, or?
Do you know how the proposal cycle works in Tezos?
Oh yes, of course. Okay.
So the next proposal is coming up in about 3 weeks. It's I think our plan was around the 18th or 19th of July.
Okay.
And what we'll be injecting is sort of, it's actually very simple. It's not simple. It's technically complex, but it's it makes a huge difference to users. It will make Tezos 1 accounts, so implicit accounts, delegatable.
Okay.
So that instead of having to explain to all your friends and family why you need this weird KT1 account, instead you just can delegate from your implicit account from your normal private key.
Gotcha. So maybe then let's talk about that. Why was it initially designed that you need to create a new originated account in order to delegate from?
Completely accidental path dependence. There was no deeper fundamental meaning that enabled a specific use case or another. It was literally at the time, development progressed in this specific direction and was close to launch. So it was fine, let's go with it.
Right, I see. So there isn't even some philosophical benefit to having a separation between those two types of accounts.
No, and the main thing is, so smart contracts will still be around. So everyone that wants to can still delegate from a KT1 account, from an originated account. They just have to deploy the default code effectively that replaces the original functionality that we had until now. Okay. It cleans up the account system a lot, because all of us currently sort of have to deal with edge cases a lot, where it's either it's an implicit account or it's an originated account that has code or that does not have code. And then there are a bunch of flags around the originated accounts that only matter because there may be some originated accounts that don't have code. And so going forward, it will literally just be the implicit accounts, and you can delegate from those. And there are contract accounts, like normal Ethereum smart contracts, and you can delegate from those too.
All right. Is it possible to explain in some high level, like in a minute or so, how you made that change so that, or what was involved in that change to make implicit accounts delegatable?
Yeah. So until that change, the way storage worked under the hood is that storage would track effectively would track the originated accounts. So like a storage map, so like you had a mapping of all the accounts that were delegated. And that was a mapping that only went from sort of, from a, what do you call it, contract hash? Yeah, from the originated account type effectively. And it only accepted those. And so we changed this now that there's sort of the super type that encompasses both implicit accounts and originated accounts. And the mapping for delegated accounts just goes from the super type. The other interesting change is that sort of how this historically, like how you say that you're a Baker is your implicit account delegates to itself. That still exists. But now your implicit account can also delegate to someone else in order to sort of make implicit accounts delegatable.
Is that needed, or?
Yeah, so that may go away, may get upgraded in the future as well. That instead of doing this sort of hack where you say, like, I delegate to myself and that's why I'm a Baker, you send an explicit operation saying, I want to be a Baker.
I see.
And that will bring some other benefits, but this will come in 3 months. Like, we're trying to chop it up into doable chunks.
So that's for this upcoming proposal period. You have this, and then you said some potential changes to it for the next one. Are there other kind of things in the pipeline that you're working on that you want to put up as a proposal to make a change for the
proposal will be larger, actually, I think. So Nomadic is also pushing MEB. There are some consensus improvements, which we helped on. We're also pushing quorum caps so that the quorum doesn't just like indefinitely rise or indefinitely go down.
Yeah.
That's
for those, by the way, that are listening, that you just want to know about the proposal periods and what we're just talking about now, actually, about quorum caps. That's something we actually did go through on our last webinar with the Obsidian system. So if anyone needs a background on that, definitely check that out.
Yeah.
So,
those are like the two main change. Oh, the other large change is that currently we have scriptless accounts, so accounts that have no code. Like all the current delegations have no code. And I think what we'll do is that we'll deploy a default contract to all of them. So that we can stop having the edge case of their accounts, contracts that have code and contracts that don't have code. Because that allows us to do some optimization as well.
Okay, so the fact that you have now accounts that some with code and some without causes some kind of problems or some
it's effective
overhead?
That's called tech debt. It's something that, so from a good engineering practice, we want to get rid of. The other thing is getting rid of this makes formal verification easier. Because right now, you never know whether it's only the code that controls what an account does, or also some like external flags that you don't have the ability to directly inspect from the code. Like when you just look at the code, you don't know how they're set. Those are the main reasons.
Gotcha. So I guess maybe like taking a step back a little bit in terms of Tezos or proof of stake, let's say overall. You even mentioned before that you have a larger attack surface with proof of stake. So maybe we could touch on, I'll ask here a few questions in one, and you can kind of pick up what you want to talk about. Is either like, what are some things that Tezos is doing really well with respect to proof of stake compared to some other proof of stake algorithms or protocols out there, since you do know about a number of other ones. So what is Tezos doing right? What are some other areas that for improvement, or like where do you see that there are some deficiencies in the current protocol that should be put up forward, stuff that you would love to work on going forward?
I think So one of the good points about Tezos is it works, right? And it's worked for a long time, and it's actually incredibly decentralized. Yeah, it's actually incredibly decentralized when you think about it. So sort of having this concept that you need a minimum, like you need one role to participate, but you can have a large number of people participate. I think that's quite powerful. I think sort of going forward, interesting changes could be that you allow pass-through voting, so that so right now, if your baker votes one specific way and you don't like it, you can leave, but that's not great because maybe the guy is like really good at what he does, and like you just have like sort of you want to like have a completely fundamental like you want to have a different opinion effectively. And so one thing that will definitely eventually come is that like delegators can overwrite other people's votes, like not other people's, their bakers' votes, right? So like if I'm a baker and I vote A, but like one of my delegators with 1% of my tokens votes B, then 99% of my tokens vote A still, but the 1% gets sort of a separated thing as voting B.
Right.
Just to give effectively to give delegators more power in this case.
Right. So effectively, you're saying so like in a sense, the delegators are able to vote directly as opposed to just being the bakers.
Yes, but they don't have to. Like by default, the vote stays with the baker, and like because this sort of prevents scenarios where, for example, all the bakers collude and they do something crazy, but all the delegators know that this is a shitty idea, and so all of a sudden, if all delegators just vote no, this won't work. Like so you can. It's sort of like a fail-safe almost, like parliamentary democracy, where you sort of like you have an elected representative that you delegate your voting power to. But if that guy goes like crazy, you can just say like, no, this is a bad idea. Please don't.
Gotcha. Yeah, I know there was an idea put forward. I don't know where. It may have been maybe even Arthur Brightman suggested this, that instead of voting for another way, you can just allow delegators to move their coins to another baker, and actually, so your vote only goes according to the number of rolls that you have at the end of a particular period, as opposed to counting it the way it is at the beginning of a period.
Yeah,
so right. So like it gives people the opportunity to at least see like, oh, the way you voted, and then pull out. I guess it would be you vote first and then the count. You brought up. I know you have this really strong opinion or a great idea around protocol development, core development, in terms of how to get developers paid. So what is this idea on how to fund development?
It's sort of when you look at the state of core development, like the state of all these protocols, it's very sad, right? Like if you take together like Bitcoin, Ethereum, all the blockchains, and they're all useless, like including Tezos. They're like all not in a state where we could support, let's say, more than 100,000 people worldwide using any of these systems concurrently. It's very sad, but the problem is that Ethereum was very good at figuring out how to provide economic incentives for people to build applications, right? Like dApps made tons of money. They made billions of dollars by sort of doing these fundraisers and ICOs. So thousands or hundreds of thousands of people writing Solidity contracts. And honestly, I think this is good, but this is sort of, there's a missing piece to that puzzle, which is what happened in Ethereum. Thousands of people built dApps. The protocol didn't evolve fast enough, so all the dApps all of a sudden sucked. And like most of the dApps are totally worthless and will never be implemented.
Right.
And so Tezos came up with this very interesting idea that when you submit a proposal, so when you submit a code change, you can attach an invoice, which is effectively just saying, protocol, please pay me X amount of money in order to pay for my development work and pay for my code. And I think it's something that we should leverage way more. Because let's say like a meaningful invoice of like 100,000, 200,000 XCZ sounds like a lot of money, but in relationship to the overall market cap of Tezos of 700 million, it's like a 10,000% in terms of inflation and dilution that normal holders have to expect. And so I think it's really up to, like, I'm really looking forward to the governance systems, like the Tezos token holder system in general, to understand how much access to capital they hold, like how much financial power they effectively can wield by using the governance process.
Right.
And yeah, I think it would be tremendous. Like if we can figure out how to get 1,000 developers into core development on Tezos, my job will be a lot more competitive. But it's fantastic because like 1,000 people working on core will mean that we evolve at like 100x the speed that everyone else is evolving.
Right. No, that would be an amazing development for sure. And I'm even thinking, I mean, you're saying to inflate the coin more, that there is an inflation that then goes to that developer. But I'm wondering if it should even instead deduct from the current ongoing inflation, which I believe is like 5.5%, maybe some percentage of that. Although I guess at the end of the day, it makes no difference. Effectively, either Bakers, and one that's just Bakers getting diluted, and the other everyone gets diluted.
So it's like, I think you want to pay for both. It's like you want to pay for the security of your chain by sort of incentivizing people to stake, and eventually this can go away if transaction fees pick up enough. So over time, this can probably go to zero. Mm-hmm. But you also want to pay for meaningful changes to your underlying system to actually happen. So I don't think they have to be mutually exclusive.
Right.
It's tough. You can play around with this.
Yeah, I mean, do other so where have you gone with this idea? How sort of like widespread, or how much?
So the problem
all
is,
of you out there that are listening, let's make this happen.
Until Tezos, we didn't have on-chain governance really, right? So this is extremely hard. This is impossible to do if you don't have governance, because, well, who decides who to fund and how much to fund them with? But all of a sudden, you have this coin holder set, and they can vote. So you have governance, and like due to that, governance mechanisms with Tezos, starting with Tezos effectively, are the first ones to really that can experiment with it, which is sort of tremendous when you think about it, because it's like you can get a massively large first mover advantage, just by testing this out. And if it doesn't work, then like you stop doing it. But if it works, it's like fantastic.
Right. I mean, how feasible do you think this is to implement? Let's say in 6 to 12 months.
I think this is feasible, sort of 3 to 6 months already.
Really? Okay.
Because the code is already written. It's like Nomadic already did this, sort of with a token amount of like 100 XCZ. But it's mostly community sentiment on like, what as a community do we want our sort of governance policy to be? Do we want to be like Bitcoin and hope that sort of large people, like investors with large amounts of capital, pay for the development of the underlying system? Or do we want to take control into our own hands as a community and sort of go like, we are the Tezos governance system, and we want this, and that, and we'll pay for it ourselves. It's not like whether you want to depend on charity or want to like take control of it yourself.
Gotcha. You mentioned before that you have, I guess, some projects that you've worked in conjunction with Nomadic Labs. I'm just curious in terms of what is your relationship with other development teams, or maybe if you can list some of the other ones out there. I don't know whether it's Obsidian Systems, Nomadic. What's the lay of the land, and how do you kind of navigate through it?
The lay of the land is in terms of core dev. There's Cryptium Labs and Nomadic Labs. That's it. Okay. And then we have Obsidian System. So to be fair, Obsidian System does some.
I guess there was also the OCaml Pro group, which is now, I guess, sort of splintered off, or they'd never.
Yeah, so OCaml Pro never. So they always worked through Nomadic Lab on the protocol.
I see.
So like a couple of OCaml Pro employees used to, I think one of them still is, work for Nomadic, and sort of work through them or with them, but not as like independent entities. Then there's Obsidian Systems, which wrote a lot of things around baking tools like Kiln. Did they write Kiln?
Yeah.
I think they wrote Kiln.
Yeah.
And like the ledger applications. Then we also have one of the Obsidian System guys also work on core. So he just happens to do the ledger integration and also do core. It's kind of cool.
Okay. Yeah.
And yeah, that's it for core development. And then you sort of have some.
But what about on the, I guess, the DLS side? Aren't there dynamic ledger solutions?
So DLS does not have any developers on their own. So it's, in terms of core teams, it's Nomadic and Cryptium.
Gotcha.
Then we have like So I think Seracle is working also on sort of a high-level tooling, so like more like dApp stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, we are like 4 or 5 dev teams.
Gotcha.
Still fairly nice. Like,
right, it's still small, and I guess most of you are in. Well, you're in Switzerland, but I don't know how much of the other Tezos teams are. Well, you just have the foundation based there, so I don't know what kind of.
So Nomadic is based in Paris.
Yeah,
it's like a 4 train ride for me to go to Paris from Switzerland. So it's like,
gotcha. All right. So, are there? So let's talk a little bit more about some of the stuff that you're working on with respect to. I know I guess your flagship tool that people probably know about is the Backerei automated payment system for bakers, right? So is that is that fair to say that that's sort of what is most used out there, or?
So
yeah,
Backerei is not an officially supported tool. It just happens that we had to write one and we like open sourced it. Due to this, like there are some issues with it that like depend on the specific configuration setup. It's like
gotcha.
So we've like
and I've also noticed. Yeah, I mean, I've also noticed that it pays out based on, I guess, what in theory you should have, what the baker should have earned, but not necessarily what the baker collected in practice if they missed some blocks.
Yeah. So yeah. Okay. Let me sort of like Backerei.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt you. Yeah.
Yeah, it just happened that we needed a tool to do this, and so we open sourced it because like at the time the need was there. But it's like, please don't look at us to like offer you like SLAs or something like that. Like I'd much rather be known for like the protocol development side than Backerei. But Backerei is sort of interesting because I think we were the first ones doing this. We pay you the perfect rate. So we pay what the protocol provides, like the inflation that the protocol provides. And if we miss a block, we still pay as if we hadn't missed that block. So we ensure full liveness. Even if we sort of go down for six hours or something, it doesn't actually matter to you as a delegator because we will just pay you. And I think most people don't know this. The other thing is we don't pay stolen blocks because, right, like we have to sort of finance the insurance somehow. So when we are like optimally connected and we sort of like get to steal a block once in a while, this is sort of used to cover when we aren't optimally connected and we lose a block.
That's fair.
But it means that you get a perfectly stable rate, which is exactly what the protocol would have paid you if you had run your own perfect 100% Baker with 0 steals and 0 misses. Yeah.
Gotcha.
One important caveat here is, which also most people don't realize, that if someone else, right, like if I have an endorsement and it gets included in priority 0 block, I get 2 XCZ as a reward. But if it gets included in priority 1 block, I only get 1 XCZ. We don't insure for other people's faults. So like if the priority 0 proposer misses his slot, and our endorsement due to that gets a lower reward, Backerei takes that into account.
Okay, so that's fair. Yeah, so do you have like statistics in terms of like how many people downloaded it or installed it?
No idea.
Really, no.
Open source code. We don't track it. It's Apache license. Anyone can take it.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to have like quite a lot of talk in the space. And then
it'd be cool. It's a cool tool, and it works extremely well. It's like this is an important point. Most other tools rely on the Tezoscan API or some like other actually no, they rely on the Tezoscan API, which is terrifying because like Tezoscan is a centrally run service, BioCamel Pro. And if they feed you wrong data in their API, they can cause you to pay to them or some other person unlimited amounts of funds.
Right.
If you want to run your own baking tooling, please do not rely on like a centralized API. Rely on like the full nodes, the RPC from a full node.
Yeah. And I mean, now also I think there are a number of other Tezos blockchain explorers that are coming up that are, so not everyone at least, or at least maybe you can connect to a couple of APIs and compare them.
Build your tooling so you don't rely on other people's APIs. Build it against your full node RPC.
Listen to Adrian, everyone. Connect to your own full node and there you have it. Okay, I mean, well, I guess we'll go to questions in a minute, but I just wanted to ask you, are there other tools that you're working on, or it's just primarily now on the core development side?
Everything will relate to core somehow. So we're also looking into sort of research into how do we design secure smart contract languages that are actually formally verifiable, right? Like I sort of gave you this example early on, that smart contract, like when you write a smart contract, it's nice to have JavaScript to experiment. But smart contract development are more like writing flight controller software. If the smart contract faults, 500 people die because the plane crashes. It's like smart contracts have 500 lines of code, so it's like very small code, but controls $500 million worth of money. So it's like the one time where you shouldn't use JavaScript. We can use JavaScript or Python to onboard people into the ecosystem, but like the high value applications should not be written in Python or JavaScript. That's like terrifying.
Right. Yeah. So I guess I just wonder, because there does seem to be quite a number of different smart contract languages now out there. I mean, for Tezos, you have like Liquidity, which now maybe there's been a little bit of move away from. SmartPy is one now that is also being supported by the Tezos Foundation and the TQ group that's based here in New York. And LIGO is another one, and there are a few more. So I guess you've still felt that none of these quite do the job.
Like all of them address the problem of usability, but none of them so far have addressed the problem of safety. And like I sort of agree. Like in the beginning, right now this isn't tremendously useful. Right now we need more developers, so you want to make it as easy as possible for people to come in. But in sort of the long run, we want something that is like secure at the high level language that you write in. The other thing we're working on is sort of is zero knowledge proofs. So I've spent my last 2 weeks at a zero knowledge workshop in London. I'll be going to Tel Aviv, Israel, to work with the Starkware guys on a workshop there. So hopefully we can sort of figure out a way to introduce this into Tezos as well.
Yeah. I'm sorry, which group was in Israel? You said
Starkware.
Starkware. Okay. Are they? I'm not familiar with them. So.
It's sort of the original authors of the Starks paper. They're like ZK Snarks, but without trusted setup. We can like the cool thing is like I think we underestimate the applications of like zero knowledge proofs in general. You can use them, for example, to build really efficient light clients where you like do header compression, where like instead of verifying 1,000 headers, you verify one proof. You can do shielded payments, you can do shielded voting, all sorts of cool things.
Okay, amazing. Yeah, I mean, maybe would love to, as you develop this out some more, love to have you back and just to walk us through kind of what you've been doing on the zero knowledge proof side. But we've been going, I think, for a bit. So let's take the questions. I think there were some that came in through the chat on the side, and then there's also one on the ask the question side on the bottom. So it seems like a bit long. I'm actually going to look at the ask the question one on the bottom first. So it says, Adrian, at the moment, everyone has skin in the game. Bond pooling would destroy that. Do you think that helps Tezos? If so, why? So I'm not sure. Explain bond pooling.
So bond pooling is sort of the common practice that. So bond pooling currently happens. So you have to look at where do people get their security deposits from that they have to use in the protocol. Some companies raise some VC money and then sort of invest that VC money into buying XYZ to put up bonds. Others sort of have effectively loans from other people in off-chain contracts to put into bonds, which is what we do. Very few teams, like outside of the exchanges and the VCs, there's almost no one that is running that like doesn't take outside capital. It's like bond pools already exist, and they haven't destroyed the security model so far, so I think we're safe. But I'd much rather see them to be more transparent. It's like where I know how much someone has taken in from like outside capital, so that we have like an accurate view of the network.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I guess I'm trying to understand why. What is the assumption that it would destroy the network? I don't see what is the I guess fear or.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It's like the main thing is that there needs to be something at stake that is slashable if you do bad things. And as long as we maintain that invariant, we're in almost all cases, we're in all cases safe.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Yeah, I don't know. Do you want to read that question? There's a long one on the side.
I have a question. Camel has a lot of benefits as functional languages. It's very hard to predict how programming languages evolve. That's true. Yes, currently protocol, submitting proposals for the protocol are completely tied to Camel. Yes, so there is a theoretic path to evolve this. And I think most likely this...
Yeah, I was just going to repeat. So just in general, I guess the question is, can we move away from OCaml if it is determined that it's not the best language for the network?
Yeah, I think we should ideally try to move towards a more language agnostic system. So something around WebAssembly, so that we have a WebAssembly interpreter that interprets the protocol. And so then you can use there's currently one guy working on compiling OCaml to WebAssembly, and then you can also write protocols in Rust, in Go, in C, and C++, and sort of in JavaScript maybe even at some point. It's more sort of a move that we aren't tied to necessarily one language in the implementation. Because right now, the way the protocol works is we're extremely tied into the OCaml compiler. And I know, so I agree. We can move to WebAssembly over time, I think.
It's possible. All right, and the next question from the same person who's this person, that's Bobby Boyd. What's to keep someone from resubmitting an invoice proposal without a cost and voting down the invoiced proposal? Just that it would negatively influence future developers. What happens when someone submits a great proposal for way too much, but it's a feature we still want?
It's a good question. We'll have to see how this plays out in the real world. I would hope that the governance system wouldn't vote on a proposal that just resubmitted without an invoice, because you have to think, right, all these systems are about economic incentives. And by doing this, you remove the economic incentive for more developers to do more development on core. If you don't want any development to happen, this may be a good strategy. But if you sort of want continuous improvement of the protocol, you want to have continued financial incentives. The zero case is sort of easy. The higher case, it's sort of, I don't know, it very much depends, right? What is too high? What is sort of a reasonable thing that you are willing to pay for things, right? Because you sort of have to imagine how many developers are writing code that upgrades a network valued at $700 million to $1 billion. So it's sort of a trade-off.
I would think
I wouldn't be too worried about for now.
Right. I think I would imagine a system where there is separately an automatic inflation or an allotment that is just for these proposals. So meaning, let's say maybe there's 1% a year that's automatically goes into a certain pool of money for. So and then at that point, that can be divvied up among all the proposals. I guess you still need a mechanism in case there was nothing really submitted or just one small thing. You don't necessarily want the whole pool to go to that person, but maybe at least to pull the money out initially will make it easier to spend it. Yeah,
I think for now we shouldn't worry about things being too high. We should worry about not having enough people actually developing meaningful upgrades. I think this is very good problem to have.
Completely agree. Yeah, we should get to that point. Let's cross that bridge when we get there. Completely agree. So for all of you listening out there or watching out there, so the recording to this will always live at this URL. It'll also be on the Blockmatics's YouTube channel, which you should check out. We have a lot of other great webinars there. Also, check out our website, blockmatics.io. We have a newsletter, something in the crypto space, and we have a lot of training programs we have actually one on Tezos and hoping to build some more going forward. But we're based here in New York, so we also do in-person classes and blockchain consulting here in New York. So, Adrian, thank you so much. Before you go, do you want to tell people about, I guess, what they should sort of track you on and follow with respect to yourself and Cryptium?
Yeah, I just posted it in the chat, actually.
Okay.
You can follow us on Cryptium Labs on Twitter. We also have a Medium publication, which we post a ton of technical content.
Excellent Medium publication, by the way. That's really fantastic. I really learned a lot through your Medium. I should really give it a good shout out.
Yeah. And so this is going more and more off in the weeds on like how do we build specifications and how do we improve the core protocol to be actually useful, right? Because eventually we need something like sharding and so on. So like, we need way more things. That's why I'm very happy to like onboard another 1,000 developers into core.
Okay, we need 1,000 developers for sure.
Into like our Cryptium website as well. We have a new website, which is cool.
Oh, okay. Well,
yeah, besides that.
All right, thanks everyone, and we'll see you again next time. And again, Adrian, pleasure talking to you, and keep up the great work.
Pleasure talking to you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.